Just before the break, I welcomed Brigid Kandie, who's the head of school administrator at Kitengela International School, Athi River. Karibu sana, Brigid. You found us just examining the latest as far as education is concerned. I'm sure there are other challenges, but just focusing on the release of the K.I.S results and the anticipated placement into senior school and the kind of gaps that exist, because now it is the very first time we're experiencing this with the very first cohort of grade 9 learners transitioning to grade 10. You coming from a private school environment, there are opportunities for you, but do you also share in the concern that even with the opportunities available to private schools, there are serious disparities in as far as what urban schools can achieve, what private vis-a-vis urban public schools can achieve as well, in as far as the CBC is concerned?
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for having me this morning. And first of all, I want to thank you for having me this morning and really pass my congratulations to the candidates of K.I.S. We have received the results and we are so happy with the results that we received. To address the concern that is on the ground right now, first of all, we have an issue with awareness. Parents are a bit jittery and they're anxious. They're wondering what next. The government has given us the way forward that by January, the students will be reporting to senior school. But you realize that there are areas, that there are gray areas where parents are not really understanding how will the placement be done. They're expecting learners to be, we still have our traditional way of placing learners in Form 1 in our previous 844 system. And going forward, parents and even other stakeholders are not very sure of how we are going to do the placement.
Is this confusion only with the parents? Because I understand even teachers and some schools are causing the confusion as well. The ministry had to clarify and even tell off schools that are already ranking and publishing how their students are performing, meaning that even the ministry does not agree with some of the actions schools are taking. Don't you think that even teachers and schools are causing confusion? True,
because I've also talked about stakeholders. That means those are teachers, parents, and even the learners themselves. There's still some confusion. And you even realize that the performance levels were misunderstood, where we had exceeding expectation, the EE, being confused to the previous E in 844, where E was a failure or a fail. So there's still a lot of gaps here and there, and I really wish to call upon the ministry, the teachers, the schools to be able to understand this so that they can raise awareness with the parents and the learners as well, so that we can end this anxiety and confusion amongst our learners especially, because it really does disturb them and it affects the emotional well-being. Because we really need to ensure that they are ready, even emotionally.
Okay. Moving forward, with the kind of discussions happening, even at the political level, aspirations of becoming Singapore, first world. Of course, education is key in that it cannot just be about funding and infrastructure. It has to be also about the level of understanding of the society. CBE probably is the best placed for that, but there are serious gaps as well. Do you believe that education experts are part of this conversation of moving us from whatever status we are to the next level?
That is what is needed. That's what should happen. Actually, we have put it very clearly many times that government, as it works ahead to plan and to have foresight on education, they need the education experts. But instead, we have had the government dealing more with the political side. And actually, we have once, in many times, talked about how education experts in this country have been relegated. We saw Professor Hiro of DStv University heading a very serious commission one time to review the CBE, that time called the CBC curriculum that we are having today. And a meeting was convened at the KICD. And in that meeting, the minister at the time for education was Amina Mohammed. And Ms. Amina Mohammed listened to us as experts, and we told her the gaps and the things that were needed to be done. And what Amina Mohammed did, she immediately called a press conference at the steps of KICD and declared we have to postpone the implementation of CBC by 1 or 2 years to just allow ourselves to get the grasp and get the gaps filled. So when she made that announcement, the political wing came in very strongly. Actually, she was removed from the ministry the next day in the morning. By the next day, she was no longer Minister for Education. Airo and the rest of us were sidelined from everything. Politicians now took over. When you hear things like Presidential Working Party, giving us directions on what we should do, yes, you may see educationists there. But most of the time, when you hear the word Presidential Working Party, they are working with some terms. They've been given the conditions to work with. So they are no longer really independent. We can't call it like the McKay report. We can't call it like the Douglas Odhiambo report, an expert. No, we are now talking about the presidential working. That is a force being funded and given direction, and it's a puppet directions. So they are not really on their own. So this is what I want to say. The day this country will decide to go to Singapore, or the Singapore way, they will allow people to keep to their lanes. It's like football, I like using football. If you are a coach, be a coach. If you are a player, be a player. If you are a manager, be a manager. We cannot allow every Tom, Dick, and Harry coming to our system, education system, to spoil for us. We are telling lawyers, keep away from the education system. Allow us to do it. We are telling these politicians, MCAs, tusimutuache, tufanye kazi yetu. Sisi ndio walimu tumetrain kwa hivi vitu. Why are MCAs so frontline in our issues to do with education? Why are politicians feeling so much educated than all of us in the education sector? We were trained to do education. Allow us to run education.
The biggest problem is funding. And if we were to bridge the gap that we've discussed, because this is across board, university education, secondary education, everything is about money. Yet education is still the biggest spend in our budget, over 700 billion shillings. What would you propose? It's already the biggest spend. We have very huge shortfalls. That is the state of our education. How else can you bridge that gap?
Thank you, Fred. That's a very good question. We understand that in Kenya, the money that is allocated to the various ministries or to various institutions, most of it is embezzled by those at the top. So I think we need to send a message as a country, starting with the president, that the people who are found to have engaged in embezzling of funds should be dealt with. And the government should also have, I can call it a plan. There seems to be no exact plan. For example, an infrastructure plan. There was President Uhuru Kenyatta. That time, Professor Magoa was the CS. The CS went on constructing classrooms across the country. And the moment he exited, those classrooms could not be completed. So there needs to be a blueprint, like what the president is talking about Singapore. We need to have a blueprint in the Ministry of Education. Let us also take stock of what we have. For example, today, if you ask about the secondary schools that we have, is there a plan? Because you'll find in some areas where you have like 3 secondary schools within the same radius. That is not a prudent use of resources. So can we do an audit of the systems that we have right now, and then do a projection, come up with a blueprint, maybe in the next 10 years or 20 years. Mr. Munga talked about the leadership within the Ministry of Education. If you look at the president, that is President William Ruto, most of the people he has been appointing in the ministry, you just look at them and just wonder, because like the former cabinet secretary, Mr. Machogu, who was there, you could be able to tell that he wasn't a man by himself. He could not be able to push policy. The current cabinet secretary, is doing quite a lot. You can see that he's trying. But then it could have been much better if you had an educationist at that particular docket who is able to understand. Because the current cabinet secretary, yes, he's really trying. You can see he's engaging the stakeholders, but it could have been better if you put someone there who understands
would that resolve
Education 101.
Would having an education expert resolve the funding crisis? Because it's issue about disbursement of capitation money to schools and things like that, employment of teachers. Do you really need a teacher or an education expert at the helm of the ministry
you do
for
not,
those things to happen?
Thank you, Fred. You do not really need a teacher per se as far as the money issues are concerned, because nowadays most funds are allocated from quote-unquote State House. So it's more of a political issue. That is why Mr. Munga is saying we need to depoliticize the education sector so that it doesn't depend on the whims of the person who is occupying the house on the hill. That the experts need to be brought on board. This country has one of the finest education experts, be it in finance, be it in curriculum, be it in planning. They're always there, but they're not consulted, they're not given a front seat. Even the issue of test and measurement, when the Kenya National Examinations Council is releasing the results, we ought to have seen the professors of test and measurements interpreting that particular data for the Kenyans, telling us what is the projection, but it is not there. So there is a way that these experts within the education sector have not been given priority. What has been given priority is politics.
All right. Back in a few years back, there were school inspectors